It's so good to see you. You know, even when we're accomplished in our field, every author begins at the same place with their first book. Katherine Barner is my guest today, and she fits that description. Deeply respected as a counselor and a speaker, she's launching her first book, and she's going to share with us what she's learning. It's good to see you. I'm Patricia Durgan, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews by and for Christian writers, speakers, and artists. This is episode 154, 5 Techniques I'm Using to Launch My First Book by author Katherine Barner. Hello, Katherine. How are you?
I am wonderful, Patricia. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're having a little bit of an audio thing, but we're going to work toward it. We're just going to try to ignore it.
Okay.
It just goes away. Maybe the Lord will help that happen.
Yes, we'll pray for him to make that go away sooner rather than later.
Yes. And so what I want to know is, in my research, is you've been in the mental health field for almost 24 years, a little over 24 years, but you're not an armchair expert, are you? You've been in the trenches.
I have been in the trenches, Patricia. I have done everything from inpatient psych hospital to schools to nursing home to prison to local county jail, and I like to say all of the above. Absolutely nothing surprises me anymore. I've been in private practice as well, so but I absolutely love it. Have loved it for these 20 plus years. It started out simply as my mother. So when I graduated from college, my mother saying, "You need a job."
Yes.
And so it happened by happenstance, but I fell in love with it. So yes, I've definitely been in the trenches of it for a really long time.
Mm. And you serve your community locally as well. In addition to the things you just said, I saw that you were putting on a panel discussion with a judge about domestic violence. So you're in it.
Yeah, I am. And that actually came about. It was really interesting how that came about. I was actually speaking at another event and happened to meet this judge here in Harris County, Texas, of course. We're here in Houston. And she handles the only domestic violence court here in the state of Texas, actually. It happens to be here in Harris County. It blew my mind. And so we got together. I got a call from one of her representatives, got together about doing a panel discussion. And so that was really exciting to get a chance to do that, because that is something that I have seen through the years, obviously a lot in my practice on a number of different levels. And so it was really exciting to be able to partner with her to give people information on two different sides of the fence, both from the legal aspect and just helping them be aware of the services that are out there, and then also helping them understand kind of how this thing happens from the whole mental health perspective.
You're very service-minded, aren't you?
I am. I have to be honest. I haven't always been. I'm just being totally transparent. I'm a baby in my family, and so I was spoiled, and in translation, a bit selfish. But God has done a work, and it took some time for me to own that. But it was the truth. And so, but what God did in me was to help me begin to understand and see that were it not for His grace, I could very easily be the person on my sofa and in a lot of very different situations. And so that's really when things begin to change for me.
Nice. We're having a little bit of lighting issues. Is there any chance that your lights are flickering on and off?
I am not. There's no light on here with me.
Then we're just going to ignore the whole thing. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Do anything about it. We're here to talk. We're all going to talk.
Let's do it.
I believe that you've had your own experience with the loss yourself, haven't you?
I have. With respect to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but with respect to the book in particular, when I talk about grief, I talk about it just in terms of loss. And so it's actually a really good question, because oftentimes when we think about grief or we hear grief, we automatically talk about death. But grief is about loss. And so I've had my fair share from the death of both of my parents, actually. It didn't really hit me until both of them passed away. Also have gone through a divorce, have had to deal with significant illness of my mother in particular, and the loss associated with that, and with that, how that relationship had to shift as a result of that. Unemployment. This is something that I had not talked about a lot, actually, until I wrote it in the book. I was fired from a job after 20 plus years and was devastated by that. So that loss. And so, yeah, I've had my share through the years. And so, but God has been faithful. And that was part of the push behind the book, I'll say, wanting to understand that God is still faithful in the middle of all of it.
How did Christ help you bounce back from the loss of the job that you invested over 20 years of your life in, and the identity that was attached to that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what you said. It was the identity. Oftentimes men in particular, just the way that they are wired, their job is who they are. But women, we are as well. And like I said, all I've ever done is mental health. And on this particular job, I had not been there, but had been there probably a year and a half or so. And the most challenging thing for me, and what God had to help me heal from, was the hurt of the betrayal that happened that caused the fallout, we'll say. He really had to help me because I had never experienced anything like that. I had never, from, unfortunately, people who were believers. And so it was very difficult for me to be able to reconcile that happening. But again, I had to look past them, and I had to look past the situation, and I had to look to him. And I even had to look at myself and say, okay, was there anything in here that you did or didn't do? And then what is it that he wants you to learn from this? So yeah, it was definitely a growth process for me. And honestly, something that needed to happen for me to move to the next level of honestly where it is God wanted me to be in the first place.
Yes. We can see that in retrospect, but from the going forward, that's very, very difficult to catch on.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Yes. When you're in it, it's like, okay, God, wait a minute. What are you doing? What is this? And, particularly in that situation. And it's interesting, after I wrote the book, a dear friend of mine, we've been friends for over 20 years. We're in college together, and she read the book and she said, and we talk at least a couple of times a week. She said, I never knew that. And I said, well, yeah, I know, because I didn't tell anybody, because there's that the shame of it, the confusion. And it's like, God, what in the world are you doing? Because you say to someone, I was fired. And I'm like, okay, so what'd you really do? And, you say, well, I didn't do it. Like, I really didn't do anything. And they're like, no, but really, Katherine, like, what did you do?
Yeah, what did you do?
So you have to get over that. But again, and I had to really just get really quiet and really still and listen to God. And like I said, recognize that he needed me going in a different direction anyway. And that was part of his way of getting me to do that. So
I'm not sure that the loss of a job or a career or a fantastic opportunity, whatever term you would use to describe it, I'm not sure that those of us who've been through that experience our pain is acknowledged or even understood by other people who've not experienced it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because it doesn't, people say, oh, well, just go get another job, or it's not that big of a deal. But going back to what you said, it's that identity piece. We do oftentimes identify with what we do, because the first thing you do when you meet someone, you say, hey, so what's your name? And so what do you do? Yeah. That's how we're wired. And so we are very much geared to identifying ourselves with our profession and what we do. And, if you've been in it for X number of years, then you should be at a certain position. And so when that is stripped away from you for whatever reason, then you have to redefine. So now who am I without this position? And whether that's the finances, whether it's the attention that comes with it, the extra accolades, whatever those things are that are now there. And so you are forced to look at yourself in a different way and recognize that ultimately our identity is in Christ. And all the other stuff is just that, it's stuff. So, it takes some time to get there.
Yes. My husband left one field that he'd been in very successful in for 15 years. And prior to that, while he was in that field, he was the top dog and he was used to people doing, and he didn't take advantage of it, but he was accustomed to people, running the show.
Yeah.
People listening, what did David say? What does David think? And all of a sudden he's just a regular Joe. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. So what am I supposed to do with this?
It was a process. I mean, he's fine. He was a fine Christian before, and he's a better Christian now, if that's possible. But there was an adjustment period, and Christ was good to let him mend.
Absolutely.
Mm-mm.
And I think one of the things I talk about specific to that in the book, because I do touch on the unemployment pieces, is giving yourself permission, to heal, and giving yourself permission to not be okay. And recognizing that there has been a loss. I share sometimes when I'm teaching a story of a gentleman that I was working with who was in the military for over 20 plus years and left the military and went to corporate America, and he was top dog. And then it came time for him to retire. Mm-hmm. Wanted to retire, and he was happy to retire, but then he hit a wall and literally did not know what to do with himself. But it was, and he came and he said, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I said, well, you're grieving because all of those years, he was this person. He was he was the leader. He was all of that. And now he had to redefine who he was as an individual. He wasn't working anymore. And so that was very difficult for him. And so I share with people, you have to give yourself permission to move to this next level. And it's okay if it takes a minute to kind of redefine now what's happening with my life.
Yes. And you've done this both in your local community and the fields that you belong to and the responsibilities that you've had. And you have even had a radio show that you're no longer doing called The Pearls of Wisdom. And you did that for a year and a half. It was gangbusters. You backed off on it to write your book. But are you moving that now to rebooting that?
It's really interesting. I am rebooting it in a very interesting way. I put it on hold for a year. I absolutely loved it. And just a little history. I had never done radio before. The only experience I had with anyone really doing radio, I have a dear, dear uncle who I love dearly. He had a radio program, oh my gosh, over 30 years ago. And that was really my only exposure to someone doing radio. But as I began, after I was fired from this job and started doing what God really wanted me to do anyway, I was sitting at the computer one day and putting some things together for the ministry. And God said, what about radio? And I said, what about it? What you got, God? Because I got nothing. So again, just got quiet and just began moving really deliberately, and things literally fell into place. Radio station here in Houston that I didn't even know about actually ended up calling a station in Dallas, and then was directed to a station here in Houston, and even the financing for it, and all of those things literally just fell in place. And so I absolutely loved it. What I did on the show, I interviewed women from around the Christian community who had stories of God's faithfulness is really what it was about. To help other women who were listening understand that whatever you go through, no matter how ugly it may be, God is faithful and his word is true. And so if he can do this for these women, he can do it for you. And so I did it for about a year and a half, put it on hold to get the book started. And because radio is super expensive. But I recently really began feeling the tug and the pull to be back in it. But I just wasn't sure how to make it happen. There's so many options. And about a month or so ago, I had a friend come to me and ask me if I would interview her about some things that she's doing. And I said, well, I don't have the show anymore. She says, yeah, I know. And so as we're sitting at breakfast, I said, well, hang on a second. We can do Facebook Live, and we can use it through Zoom. And so I start laying out how we can do this. And she said, well, you just told me how we could do it. What do you mean? And I said, oh, I guess I did. So I temporarily have rebooted the show. We started out doing 4 weeks with her just to kind of share what she's been doing through the summer, dear friend of mine. So we're going to finish that in a couple of weeks, and then we'll see what God does. If it continues in that format, or if there are a couple of other doors that have recently been presented as recently as 2 days ago. So we'll see. We'll see what he does with it. But I love it. I absolutely love it.
It sounds like there's something going on. No matter how it lands up, it's going on already.
Yes. Literally 2 days ago, I was just kind of blown away. I'll hold on to it. I'll tell you off camera. So
okay.
Everybody else wait. But yeah.
No problem. Well, let's get right into you talking about your book, which is so beautiful. God Help Me, I'm Grieving. This is your first book.
It is.
It's not huge, And I think that's a plus. Who can
And
really
that was deliberate. Yeah.
But it's so deep and so good.
Thank you.
How did you go from everything that you're already doing? I mean, you're already in that field, that creative field, but now there's a book on the table in your mind first.
So I have to be honest. I did not want to write this book. I was actually writing a different book, and I kept being drawn back to this whole grief thing. And I say that I've said this a number of times. The reason I didn't want to write the book, I wanted to write a book from my mental health, psychological, professional head, and just give me the facts. Here you go. I did not want to do what I know is impossible. I did not want to be transparent in the book. I didn't want to share me. I didn't want to talk about the employment loss. I didn't want to talk about any of the other things that I have experienced. But God said, yeah, that's good, but that's not the book. So when I finally gave in, and I remember I wrote, I think probably a couple of chapters, and I showed it to my husband, who is a psychologist. And so I showed it to him, and he kind of looked at me and goes, I mean, it's okay. And
okay.
But I knew myself that it wasn't what God wanted me to do. And so when I finally gave in and began writing it the way that he wanted me to, then we have the final product. But it was most definitely a journey. And I'm grateful for what he did with me, even through the writing process.
Yes. Now, in a little bit, we're going to talk about some techniques that you've learned to launch your book. But before we get there, what a thought went right here, and then it went right up there.
I have those frequently.
What have you learned about your message as you were formulating this and submitting to being transparent?
Honestly, the biggest thing is really that word, the whole issue of transparency, and recognizing that it is impossible to be in ministry and to really affect change in people's lives without sharing you.
Yes.
Because people connect with you through your own experiences. I can sit all day long and talk, from a head level about what I know about mental health and the stage, all this wonderful stuff. But people want to know that you felt it too. Yes. So for me, honestly, the biggest lesson was that there is blessing in the transparency. And God had to get me to that point, primarily because I am a super private person by nature. I'm becoming less so the more interviews that I do. And so I keep things really close to the vest. I don't share a lot. But this process helped me to understand, again, the blessing in doing that. Not the blessing for me, but the blessing for other people. And so then by default, I'm blessed because I continue to get comments, and I just sit back and I'm blown away, because all I can say is, I didn't want to write this book, but look what happens because I was obedient and because I did it the way he wanted me to do. So now, now I am getting comments of people who are genuinely being blessed, which of course is always the goal.
Yes, yes. And you're smart enough to know that once he opens the door just a littlest bit, he's going to keep opening it. So just a heads up.
Patricia, see, that's another conversation we'll have off topic, because it's so interesting. I was at a retreat, and I have to say, I know why he did this one this way with me, because the next one is coming, and it
love hearing that.
The moment that just hit me upside the head, and I realized, okay, I get why you took me slowly with the transparency in this one, because I just bits and pieces in this book, but the next one is coming. So prepare me.
Okay, we're going to invite you right now. When that one's ready, let us know, because we want to know more. Okay.
Okay, I'll keep you posted.
And check Facebook and see if anything's going on over here on Facebook. Let's see. We're good there. Is that right? I have two places to check.
Okay.
Over here, Janelle, Chloe. Chloe Flanagan, love your explanation of how your work transformed when you decided to share of yourself.
Wow.
Thanks very much for being here, Chloe. And we have some other people here that Facebook sometimes doesn't show me everything. And it's a shame, but that's the way it works. But we're glad you're here, whether we can see your comment or not. Maybe we can after the program is over, but keep commenting, asking questions, and I will check my phone. Sometimes it's more reliable than my computer. If you want to participate, we want to make room for you, okay?
Yes.
Now, part of your launching series is you're very, very busy. Your schedule is quite full. You've just come from several different things. You're going something, and next weekend you're going to the National Black Book Festival. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and again, I have to say that it's an adjustment for me. I actually just got home today's Thursday, so I got home last night. Prior to that, I was in California last week teaching as part of a revival. Did a women's conference. So things have been really, really busy, but it's been a tremendous blessing. And so I'm excited about it. As you mentioned, next week I'll be at the National Black Book Festival, but it is here in Houston, which is a wonderful blessing, and literally within walking distance from my house, which is so I could ride my bike there. So there's a lot going on. God is opening doors. And I say to people that, because when I look at my schedule now, I'm at a point where people will send me something and I literally have to check my phone and say, well, wait a minute, let me see. And that just blows my mind because I told my husband, I was like, I have a schedule. Like, what is that? And like, how did we get here to, I have a calendar on the wall in my office, like what? But I say to people, it has happened. Sometimes I have to sit back, but it's really because I said yes to God. It's really when we give our yes, not knowing what's going to happen after that, not having all the answers. And I was always a person who needed to know A, B, C, D, all the way to Z before I moved. Yeah. And then I needed to know like double A and double B also. But learning to trust God with just a half a step and let him do the rest. And when he gives me the next move, learning to move. So that, it's been exciting. I've got a lot going on and I'm grateful.
And when will the peak hit? When will you start slowing down a little bit?
That's a good question. I don't know. Part of me feels like I'm going to run as long as I can. I am learning to pace myself with scheduling and particularly with travel and being away from home and that sort of thing. It does wear on you and tire you out. And I have some good friends and, cousins who keep texting me and saying, eat lots of vegetables and greens and drink your water and stuff.
Good words.
But I'm going to do it as long as God strengthens me to do it. There's some other wonderful things on the horizon, and I'm just excited.
It's been my experience that the more not everybody would agree with this, but I have found this to be the case. And the people that I've known, we've been privileged to be best friends for decades with people who were deep in ministry and a true love for God. They weren't just punching the clock at the church building. They had the passion and they maintained it. And the more trusted we become in his eyes, the less information he shares about our future, his plans for us. Yeah. Do you find that to be the case?
I feel like he's giving me just bits and pieces. And they're little pieces, and he'll drop something, and I'm going, okay, so what else? Like, can you unpack that for me a little bit?
No.
But what I'm finding is no, he just wants me to operate on that little piece. Yes. Then when I get there, then he'll download the next step is what I am finding. Yes. I would love for him to just lay it all out for me, but I think he knows me, and quite frankly, probably knows obviously knows most of us enough to know that if he did lay it all out, we wouldn't do it because we'd be scared to death. Because I'm scared with a little bit. So
Yeah.
so yeah, learning to move. Sometimes you just have to, move being afraid and not knowing and trusting that he's got it.
It speaks well of you, though, Catherine, because there are some people that he can't. He has to tell them more because their relationship with him, their bond to him is so tenuous.
Yeah.
Their faith is so fragile. He has to, sort of move them along a little bit more.
Right. And I had to get there. Like I said, I've most of my life have been one I've needed to know. You got to tell me where we're going. My husband and I laugh. We call each other 45 North and 45 South. Interesting joke we have. I need to know, okay, where we're going, like what exit is it? We're going to turn. Okay, are we going out? So where we're going to stay? Do we have I need all the details. He's like, we're going 45 South. We'll figure it out. I'm like, how do you do that? That doesn't even make sense in my brain. Yeah. But God he's working on me in that area to where I'm getting to the point of, okay, so we're going 45 South. My insides are turning a little bit, but okay, let's go. But it's definitely been a process. Part of it is because what I'm continuing to see, and I'm really big on this, is his faithfulness in that, if he only gives me a little bit and he shows me that little bit, I can keep moving because I know that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. And even if I don't know, I trust that he knows. And so that's what keeps me moving, even when I'm scared to death.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody could say it better. That's perfectly expressed. Excuse me. So let's talk about the book a little bit more. I've got some quotes here. I was going to tab them, but then I ran out of pink marker, so I'm not going to show you the book because it's just completely pink.
That's okay.
One of the things you say early on, and I just love it, people often view grief as an abnormal emotional response when in fact it's the exact opposite. Help us understand that. That's so perfect.
Yeah. Grief is, again, like I said, grief is about loss. And so many times what we're talking about is the experience of the emotions behind the loss. And so many times people look at that and think that something is wrong with you because you're expressing these emotions. When in fact, if you were not expressing these emotions, myself as a mental health professionals and others would look at you and go, hang on, wait a minute. Because if anytime you lose something or someone significant in your life, there's going to be an emotional response. There's, it's something, and that typically it's the pain that we're feeling. And one of the examples I use is if something as simple as if I come and kick you in your shin, that hurts. And so you're going to have some response to that. If you didn't, I might go, okay, wait a minute. What's going on with you, Patricia? The fact that you respond to that pain of whatever that action is, and of course, we're talking about loss, that simply means that you are normal. You are moving now through a process that has happened because of the loss. And so often we look at it and we think, well, why are you still crying? Or why are you, if we talk about the job loss, well, it was only a job. But I was connected to some people. Again, my identity was wrapped up in this, and I need some time to recalibrate and put things in perspective. If we're talking about death, I was intimately connected with another person, and they are gone. So I've got to give myself time to experience those emotions and heal from that, and then move to a place of a new place of healing. So. Mm-hmm.
You had talked about the fact that both you and your husband lost your your respective fathers, within just a few months from each other. And then about 3 weeks after your dad passed, your husband had a remark.
He did. And he hates when I tell this story. I'll just share this when he because of course I didn't tell him I was putting this in the book. When he read manuscript and he saw it, but he's like, no, it was not true. That's not what happened. I said, yes, that's what happened. It was 2 weeks. So I'll share the story. As you mentioned, his father passed away April 7th. My father passed away June 9th. So literally almost 2 months to the day. His father had been sick for a period of time, had been battling cancer. My father, was well, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't here. One of the kind of sudden deaths that occur. But yeah, it was 2 weeks. I say it was 2 weeks. My husband says it was 3. It was 2. 2 weeks. You heard me say a moment ago that he's a psychologist, so he knows the same stuff that I know professionally. Okay. So 2 weeks after that, I'm still struggling. Of course, we had rolled into Father's Day by this point. I kind of liked my daddy. We, he was my father. We had our struggles and our challenges, but my dad was gone. And I was still experiencing those very real emotions. And my husband looked at me one day and he said, well, Katherine, it's been 2 weeks. You should be over that by now. Mm-hmm. And so what I say to people when I'm teaching this is that, that's a moment when I knew quite clearly that God lived in me, because my husband is still alive, and we are still married. But I shared that story not just to, he says I threw him under the bus, but it's not to throw him under the bus. It's really to share a point, in that being that a lot of times when people try to get you to grieve faster, or to not grieve, or to stop crying, or whatever it may be, it's really not about you. It's about them. That whole episode was about my husband not being able to stop his wife from hurting.
Yes.
So for him, what he was really saying is, it's been 2 weeks too long that I can't help you. It's been 2 weeks too long for me that I can't stop the hurt. That's really what it's usually about when people say those types of things to you. And so what I want people to understand is, you need to know for yourself that there is no time limit, so that you don't buy into that it's only been 2 weeks, and then you start putting pressure on yourself. And the other piece is, you need to know that they're really not trying to send you into orbit. Their goal is really not, to make you want to throw something at them. It really is them not knowing how to stop you from hurting. Yes, so, yes. Yeah, but that was a very interesting time for us.
It sounds like it. It would be if that had happened in my house, that would have been what I would call it. Interesting.
You can imagine. And, and as I did not, I didn't immediately go to, the proper response, but we got there. We made our way through it.
There's so many people, the vast majority of people are so uncomfortable around someone else's pain. Whatever kind of pain it is, they don't know what to do with it.
Absolutely. And I think part of that's because most of us, we don't like to see people hurt. I don't want to see you hurting. I don't want to see you crying. At some level, I can at least look at you and go, oh my God, what's going on? And it's because we can't change it. We can't stop it. We really can't. And so then to sit with people in that, it makes us uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because for me to just sit with you in your hurt, in your pain, in your tears, and I can do nothing, that's difficult. And so we have to understand that, we have to flip that and recognize that the just sitting in the pain and the hurt and being there really is doing something.
Yes.
It's ministering to you, because oftentimes our words are going to be so off base. And so it really is just the ministry of presence, and us being able to accept that and not feeling like I have to do something, whatever that thing is, to go away.
Well, last thing before we go to the marketing element, and I'm going to ask you a question, then I'm going to check Facebook and see what's going on over there.
Okay.
Near the end of the book, you said something startling that I've never heard or even been exposed to. You said, don't be surprised. This is near the end of the grieving process. So don't be surprised if you experience a sense of guilt about no longer being consumed with your loss. Okay, that's rattling my chain.
Yeah. So oftentimes, and particularly if we're talking about death, there are times when we can get the thought of healing, the thought of quote unquote moving on, the thought of not crying as much and not having those emotions can sometimes cause us to feel like, well, I'm not honoring this person, or honoring this relationship, or I'm not honoring, whatever the loss was. And so we can feel guilty if we start to have a good time again. We can feel guilty if we start to laugh again because, well, wait a minute, it's kind of the flip side of you shouldn't be crying any longer. We go to, oh, well, I should still be crying.
Yes.
And we have to give ourselves, again, the permission to say, if I'm having a good day and I get to a place where I can laugh and smile and have a great time, that's okay. It doesn't mean that I love this person any less. It doesn't mean that this relationship, if it's a divorce or break, it doesn't mean that they weren't important to me. It means that I've healed and I've found a new normal, but I can look back on this and not have that gut-wrenching pain that I've had before.
That's a really good sign, isn't it?
It is. That's how you are very close or have made it to what I call the healing finish line.
Healing. Oh, I like that. We have some comments here. Janelle Wood says, as I'm listening to you talk, I think the other thing that really inspires is your obvious joy. It is so encouraging to see someone who's worked through deep pain have insight and perspective that points others to the hope of Jesus.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I think I should have read this other one first. Same person, Janelle. She says, your faith is trusting the unknown to a known God. As you move forward, it is inspiring. Thanks very much for sharing.
Wow. Thank you, Janelle. That's awesome. Yes. Yeah, I'm having a great time. I have to be honest. I'm tired, but I'm having a great time.
There's something, before we move to the marketing, there's something about being in someone's presence, whether you're like this, where you are, we're disconnected, we're still connecting.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or you're in their presence physically and knowing that something in you, emanating from you, or words that you're saying, even if it's just serving them in the service, the ministry of presence, that it's helping people, that energizes us, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I tell you, Patricia, there is nothing, it gives me life. Honestly, it is the most amazing feeling to know that. And again, for me specifically with the book, I keep going back to know that Katherine, didn't want to do it, but because I allowed God to use me, that people are being blessed. That is the most incredible thing, and it blows me away every single time. I'll share this really quickly. Last Saturday, we had our annual breast cancer walk at church, and a friend of mine, we were talking. She shared with me of a coworker who had lost a family member, and she gave her a copy of the book. And I have no idea who this woman is, but she was just sharing how the lady kept telling her, thank you so much, how the book had, oh my goodness, I was looking for something. And so I'm sitting there listening to her just going, I don't even know how to respond to that sometimes, and it really just comes down to, God, thank you for using me, to help someone to heal. It's the coolest thing in the world. It really is.
It's a privilege, isn't it?
It is. That isn't exactly what it is. That he would, it's kind of like, me? Okay. That he would use me. It's amazing.
Yes. Well said. All right. So we've got 5 techniques that you are currently using to launch your book. Do you need to be prompted? Do you want me to? Do you have your notes in front of you?
I've got a few of them off the top of my head. The first one, of course, is social media, and I have to be honest. I have had to grow and am still growing here because it just is what it is, in the climate that we are in. Social media it's the thing. And I was never a really big social media person, so I've had to really get into it. But I use social media, particularly with the book. I do. And I use Facebook primarily and Instagram. I use Twitter more sparingly, but primarily Facebook and Twitter. The vast majority of my audience is on Facebook. And so one of the things that I do with the book in particular is I will do a graphic with the book every 7 to 10 days. And I'm still kind of playing around with that number to see what feels right as far as how much is too much and all of that. And responding to comments. And so every 7 to 10 days, I'll do some sort of graphic with the book. I may do a quote from the book, or I'll do a quote of someone who sent me comments on the book just to promote it that way. And I find that I get a lot of feedback from that. And there's always a link either to the website, where you can order the book and all of the other places that you can buy it. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. I think for people who are not big social media folks, I say to them, find whichever social media channel you are most comfortable with and focus on that one. Don't try to do all of them, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, the other one, Snapchat. It's too much and it will drive you absolutely batty. So I encourage people to find one or two. And if it's only one, that's fine. And particularly whichever one your audience is mostly on, and use that one. And then one of the things that I use particular with my social media, because I am not on my phone 24/7, and I'm not one of those that I can just like pop up something. I don't see how people do that. So I just don't. I schedule my post. And so I use another, it's actually called Hootsuite is the one that I use. I use that to schedule my posts. So I may sit down on a Saturday or Sunday evening while we're watching football, and I will just schedule my post for the next couple of weeks, and they're done. I don't have to think about it anymore. It sends it out automatically. And then I just monitor comments as they come in versus, thinking, oh my gosh, today at 3:00, I need to send a post. Well, I may be writing, or I may be in a meeting, or something may be going on at 3:00 and I completely forget. So that's the one thing that I've been using, social media for sure. The other one is interviews like this. I've done a tremendous amount of interviews, which has been exciting and it's been positive. But what I tell people, particularly with your first book and any book, but certainly with your first book, is that, we get so excited about the writing process and, the launch, and the book is published and now it's out there. And then it's like, hey, I wrote this book. The work really starts after the book is published. I mean, you can't just say, oh, hey, I wrote this book and it's out there. There's a ton of work that has to be done after the baby has been born and after you take the baby home from the hospital. So,
yes.
You got to raise it and grow it up. So, so the other thing I do is interviews, but even with that, the way I have done that, I've had it's been twofold. I've had people contact me, and then I've done my own research on radio programs and podcast hosts and folks who are aligned with my target audience. And then I will reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I have going on. I've written this book. I'd love to be a guest on your show. This is what I can offer to your audience. So that's been really beneficial as well. Communicating with different people, and part of it too is knowing who your audience is. Because even with grief, obviously it's universal, and this is something I had to learn, figuring out, okay, who am I really targeting? Obviously anybody can read the book and get something from it, but who are you really pointing it to? Who you're really talking to? So that's something important for you to think about with your book. So those two things, social media, obviously interviews, and doing the research, because people are typically not going to just come and ring your doorbell and say, hey, I want to interview you. You work into it.
And you have to develop a system, don't you? It takes a little while, but you just work your system.
Exactly. You have to work the system that works for you. And I'll say, it's kind of an aside, but I'll say this, not to get caught up in what everyone else is doing and trying to do it the way someone else is doing. You have to know what's going to work for you. Timing wise, what you have the time to do, how many interviews you want to do. And I'll say that even with my travel, I'm in a season in my life where our nest is empty. So there are no more little birds living in our house here. So I can be gone much more than I could have been a couple of years ago. Obviously I still have a husband, but he's self-sufficient and, can do his own thing. But so that's making sure that you're doing things that are going to fit your world and your life as you promote your book. The other thing I use, I've created an email list. And so one of the things I do with my email list, I send out, it started out as monthly, but it's now more of a bi-monthly newsletter that I write. And in there, I'll do an update on what I have going on. I'll add my itinerary, and I always add something about the book. And the goal in that is I'm really just trying to add value for those people who are following me. So I always do a short devotional, something that's hit me within that time frame, encourage them. And then again, always something about the book and a link. You always want to be driving people back to your website, wherever your book is going to live, so that they can order it. Yes. And then growing my list as I go out and speak and talk to people, always growing your list. So the social media, the interviews, the email list, and of course, speaking and teaching opportunities. There's probably nothing I love more than speaking and teaching, particularly teaching the Bible. Hands down, there's nothing I love more. So those opportunities when I'm invited, as I mentioned, I was in California last week. I did a women's conference, have some other things coming up the next few months. And so those typically come, again, some of those are going back to the interview piece. Some of those are things that I have researched myself and said, I know that my message would fit really well with what they have going on. So it's contacting those people who are putting on those conferences. And then a lot of those have come to me as well as invitations, as they've heard, whether it's an interview or someone that I know has said, hey, I need you to contact Katherine, that sort of thing. And so usually what I will do from those opportunities is always promoting the book some way, shape, or form. Whatever I'm talking about, somehow, some way, we're going to get it in there. And then using those, again, as ways to continually build the email list also. And then the last one is just good old-fashioned word of mouth. It is, people who have purchased the book, people who send me emails or text messages telling, or Facebook messages letting me know how the book has blessed them. I will ask them, tell people that that people know that the book is out there. Let them know your experience with it. Share it with them. Buy one for someone that buy one for yourself and buy one for a friend. Again, just pure word of mouth has also been something that I've seen has been a tremendous blessing to the book selling piece of it. That's what I've done.
Okay. All of that is spot on, and I'm wondering, it's so applicable to so many different environments. I mean, health related, mental issue related, and I'm not saying that correctly, forgive me.
Mental, and I've touched my niche, the vast majority of my niche are churches and the Christian community and those sort of things, but I've spoken at businesses on helping people manage grief in the workplace. I've done colleges where I've done something and so it's wherever the opportunity comes up. Now, there's certain things that I won't do because it's just not what I do. So there's some environments where I may be invited and I'm thinking, I don't know that I would be the best fit. And so that too comes in knowing what your message is. And so for me, it's because of the mental health aspect of it, there are so many different things that I can do because I've literally seen and heard it all. And then the grief piece of it. And then if we add on, obviously, the Christian piece of it and my biblical teaching. So there are lots of different ways that I tend to come at it. But yeah, I tell people, find out what's going to work for you. I also tell people not to try to do too much too soon because it can be overwhelming. And you're excited when the book first comes out. I know, because you're excited. You've worked on this thing for forever, and then the baby is finally born. You want everybody to see it, so it is really exciting. But you do have to learn to pace yourself and recognize that the baby is here, so everything doesn't have to happen right now. Like there's 3 months, and there's 6 months, and there's 9 months. So you want to keep talking. You want to be talking about it this time next year. And so it's okay if you don't get to go to, X place next month. There's time to get it done. So
that's a great word, because the enemy just pounces on us and gnaws us on our neck, trying to think. First, the lie is you can't do it. The next thing is you think you're so great because you did it.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you got to keep that in check. Most definitely.
I think we had one more comment before we close out. Let's see.
Okay.
Donna Renee Patrick says,
Donna.
She was agreeing with you when you were talking about just publishing it, launching it is the birth. There's still lots of work to do. She's saying the work actually starts once the book is out. Absolutely.
That's when it starts.
People tell us that, but it's like getting married. When you have your first child and everybody's like, well, your life is really going to change. You're like, it's just
no,
have
it's
a
not.
baby.
Right. You have no idea.
No. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story, your message, and these things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. I really, really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. And thank you, viewers, for being with us, whether you're live or replay. We appreciate you being here. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 154. 5 techniques I'm using to launch my first book by author Katherine Barner. Tomorrow, and you're going to love this, author and longtime podcast host Carol Graham joins me. She's going to tell us about her book, Battered Hope. You know Carol, don't you, Katherine?
I do.
Yeah. She's also going to tell us how to pitch ourselves, which falls right in line with what Katherine is saying, how to pitch ourselves to a radio show or podcast host. And, hold on to your teeth, she has agreed to review your pitch.
Nice.
More details on that tomorrow. That is a very cool offer, very generous offer from Carol. We're here every weekday at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. This program is designed exclusively for you to help you learn the craft of writing and speaking from professionals who are already doing it. Why? So you can take your message online and become comfortable online, because that's God's message, and that's where the audience is. Not 100%, but the bulk of our audience is online. We are wise to be good stewards of our gifts and our time and our efforts and go where they are. That's exactly what Jesus did. He went where the people were that needed his help, and he served them there. Thank you, Father, for doing that. Otherwise, where would we be? Thank you so much again, Katherine. We appreciate your time, and viewers, we appreciate yours as well. See you tomorrow.